Well, hello everybody. We're back with our old Kentucky home. Say hey everybody to everybody.
Hey, everybody.
We've been doing this about 2 years, and we've never figured out how to do an intro. Remember back in the old days when we had music and even and stuff, and when I used to edit it. It weren't in the days. We sounded fluent. But anyway,
That
uh,
ties in with today's topic.
yeah, exactly. So, Roy, why don't you tell us what the topic is today, and then I will give you the languages because we're trying to stretch out to our foreign brothers and sisters.
It is enshittification, a Cory Doctorow term, and I think it's fairly self-explanatory.
So what we're going to try to do, obviously, is tie in all the things that were wonderful when we were growing up in Bardstown, and have all turned to that stuff. You know, Roy and Dave and I have used liberally, loosely, and probably illicitly the French term for that called merde for about 50 years now, and never get tired of that joke. But I just put it on one of the messages, and merdification, and spell check said that was okay. So I'm guessing it might be it might be lay, I don't know, plural possibly. But anyway, it sounds like maybe that's French. Now I have a German friend, and I asked him because I thought the Germans would come up with something very good. So he came up with, and pardon my pronunciation, all you German listeners out there, but it's Verschlimmsicherung, which essentially is a combination of making worse and taking the proverbial. I think it's taking the proverbial shit, but I know that has all kinds of connotations. And then is another one on German Wikipedia, which is apparently Plattformverfall, which is something about the decaying of a platform, of course, mostly meaning tech. So when you hear those terms, Dave, what comes into your mind?
You're talking about something other than the general decay of my personal platform, I suppose.
Yeah, we're
So,
waiting on that one.
so well, I don't know. There are a lot of things that you can think about. As a consumer or even a user of things in this country, you wonder, you used to pay, you guys are going to have to correct me here, what, a nickel for like a Milky Way bar? A dime?
Yeah, probably.
How old are you? No, sorry. Yes.
I
I'm a
know
little bit
comic
older
books,
than
when I
you.
started reading comic books, were 10 cents. I'm pretty sure.
Yes.
That would have been in
Yep.
the mid 60s. So, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, so candy bars, what? They go up to, I guess you'd have to pay over $1 for them now. And they're not as big as they were when we were young. And so, it seems like, well, this is enshittified because, I'm paying more for less candy bar. So
Even
not that
adjusted for
my,
inflation.
Yeah.
So,
Yes. Well, Rich Hall, the comedian, always talked about how they call it a fun size. And he says, well, what kind of fun are you having with candy bar? That's about that big. It's so, yeah, it's that notion that somehow they're going to reduce it on you, and they're going to tell you that they've done something beneficial. And The whole notion Doctorow talks about with enshittification has to do with computer platforms and websites and things, where initially they pump it out to the punters, the customers, make it really appealing, but then gradually they're shifting their attention from us to businesses by advertising, and then sooner or later, by the end, it's all about the businesses, and the whole thing is full of advertising, and it's almost unreadable because you're constantly having something flashing in your face. And I think that's probably been going on for as long as businesses have been going on. But I think when the Romans were flogging olive oil, I imagine somebody was had their eye on something else. But I mean, we can talk about the morality of business as we go along. Well, I thought what we might do to tie this into our theme, rather than just three old guys sitting around moaning, is actually be three old guys sitting around moaning about how better things were before. But take it back to Bardstown and just think about in general things that we really liked in those days and that are maybe a little less so. And you've already mentioned the candy bar, Dave, but anything else comes to mind?
Oh gosh, years ago, it seemed like I what what can we not get into? I mean, the even ingredients of things that we eat and drink seem to have been modified. And of course, we'll take a political side. President Trump has announced just this week that, Coke is going to be putting sugar into their Coca-Cola
He
and
didn't
thought
tell
that's a
Coke,
great
apparently.
Yeah,
deal.
That's
news
what,
to them.
Yeah, well, and
yeah.
nobody told him that that was Mexican Coke. But anyway, uh, but beyond that, I mean, I think that there are not many of us that can drive down a street anymore, anywhere, and wonder, well, how are they fixing the potholes in the street?
Oh,
Now,
yeah.
I don't know about Maine or about
Oh
England, but
God.
it seemed like, and I can't speak to the streets of Bardstown, but I don't remember potholes the size of the that
Mack
we have
trucks. Yeah.
here
Yeah.
Yeah.
in southern Indiana now. So
Yep.
so streets. I mean, things that that certainly seem different,
Mm.
but seems like I got a lot of more enjoyment about even watching college sports. I remember years ago, my father-in-law was a big UK fan, and he wanted to sit and talk about UK basketball. And I looked at him and I said, Clyde, I can't root for UK. He looked at me kind of confused. And I said, I don't even know who's on the team. It's different from year to year. You don't have the same faces. You don't get a
Mm.
chance to see people grow and develop because either they're off to the pros or now they're off to another team. And I don't want to take anything away from the money they're making, but it seems like they move to wherever the money leads them.
Mhm.
So I'm not really sure that we'll see how that turns out to be. But gosh, potholes, um, even things as sports. Um,
Well, speaking of potholes, would lead you to cars. And I remember in the old days when we would drive around in my Volkswagen, a finer piece of automotive engineering there's never been. But you could go to a gas station, and remember, we would go out to the one out on almost on the Bluegrass Parkway because Ernie Broughton worked there, and we'd make him come out and pump our gas. And he'd always come out and say, "You lazy sods!" And I'd bumped into somebody, so he always had to jump up and down on the bumper to get the hood up because it was the front bit where you put the gas in. And so I thought, now, and I'm not sure. Ernie probably drew the line about washing our windscreen, but apparently, our windshield. But in those days, that's what they did. And I remember there being gas wars, even when I think
Yep.
I might have been driving 25 cents a gallon or something like that. And
Yeah.
that hadn't happened forever because, of course, they're all owned by one sheikh out in Saudi somewhere. But so
Right.
that's where I see it all gone to crap. Is I have to do it myself. There
Yeah.
isn't a greasy rag to wipe my windscreen with anymore. Nobody's checking my oil or my water or any of that kind of thing. And so, and
well,
Ernie
and
Broughton's not jumping up and down on
and you
the bumper.
and you and almost if you don't have a credit card or a debit card, you're almost at somebody's mercy. I mean, it's not long before I think we walk in someplace and they say, it's a dollar bill. What is that? I mean, they're getting rid of the penny.
Yeah.
So, what's that going to be? So,
I do have
it,
to
it,
say, when Americans moan about how expensive gasoline is, I pull out my violin, even the one that doesn't have any strings on it, because I pay about the equivalent of what you pay for a gallon. I pay for a liter, and so
Yeah.
it adds up. I have a small car as opposed to a land tank. but it's always a little more expensive. So going home and everybody, oh, the price of gasoline, and I go, yeah, live where I do.
And
This
I
is not
don't
counting
know
the
that. Speaking of
subsidies
the
that the
car,
government gives them. So
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Roy.
I was going to say that doesn't count the subsidies that the United States gives the oil companies. So we're indirectly paying a little bit more than people realize, but
Yeah.
still, it's still cheap compared to everywhere else.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, except
but
maybe Saudi or something. I think it's still pretty cheap over there. Uh,
we used to. The other thing is that we used to listen to the radio a lot, and FM was coming into vogue, and we were all excited about FM. I don't know who listens to AM radio much anymore. And
You know,
frankly, FM is kind of being phased out now. It's in some ways it's kind of sad because I currently you don't even use the satellite Sirius XM. I stream everything through my phone through the CarPlay Apple. And while that's great, we've all got this individual kind of soundtrack that we can listen to. I wonder what kids of today will gravitate to because whenever we talk about taking care of business by Bachman Turner Overdrive, for all of us, that kind of generates some kind of a communal picture. And so I don't know what communal picture we'll get in the future with kids
it's
because they all have their own individual soundtrack.
it's odd. I find that the kids, because my daughter still hangs around with me some and her friends, they're not kids, they're 25, but they still seem to know what's current. And I'm not sure how they do that, whether it's just online stuff, different social media saying, "Hey, look at Sabrina Carpenter or whatever," or whether it's YouTube or what. But surprisingly, I've been surprised that they actually seem to know what's current, which is or agree on what's current. I don't know how they do. Magic, I'm assuming. So yeah.
and how do some of those acts break through? Of course, there's the Taylor Swifts and the people like that who the ones who are real fans of them will know everything. So there's
Mhm.
I guess there's still the community for some of the bands, some of the musicians, some of the
Be right back.
singers, uh, uh, but not to the same extent that there probably would have been before. Or maybe there is, and it's just a different way. Um, I'm,
I'm so sorry. Hang on a second. I've got a phone call I will take and be right back.
all right.
Hello?
So now is that part of it too? Because now we have so
Hello?
much media that we get interrupted
I
with
know, and
with
he's got the Dick Tracy phone thing going on
yeah.
there. You know.
Well, many of us do. I mean,
Well,
it's
I
kind of
just have
like
this, and
yeah,
I can barely use it. Yeah.
I, I yeah, I had a friend at one time said, I'll never get an Apple Watch because I don't need to know that I've got an email on my or talk to somebody on my watch. And lo and behold, I got one, and god darn it, it isn't addictive.
Yeah, there you
But
are.
you know,
So
now,
you couldn't have carried around that wall phone around in your
oh,
pocket
Just
in
had a
the old
talk on my watch actually. So yes.
days.
yeah, well, that's true. You don't care. But the downside of that is just think. I'm trying to think of who of our friends had the cute sisters, and you call their house and you might get the sister and a chance to talk to them instead of talking to the buddy you called in the first place. But
Yeah,
no, not anymore.
yeah. Unless you're like my stepson who frequently loses his phone, so you never know who you're going to get if you call him. But I don't do that very much. But his mother does, uh, and so who's this? It still can happen. Usually it's some guy who's lifted it, who's gotten all the codes. Well, so we know there are things that have gotten, I mean, have they gotten worse? Have they gotten better? I mean, I guess that's the question of all of these things. And I guess maybe one of the things to look back on is what we thought was good at the time and has been, to use our topic, enshittified, which is to say that intentional deterioration of it for ulterior motives or for financial gain for a small number. I mean, some things just get worse just because they do. We just age. Nobody's benefiting financially from our aging, I don't think. Well,
The
except
doctors.
insurance
Yeah.
companies, doctors, and things. So I guess that would be the thing. Yeah.
I would say television news.
Yeah.
Back in the day, it was often a loss for the networks, but it was prestige who had the best news, and there was a journalistic fervor still in carryover from the newspaper days. But I think that has enshittified big time.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And it's the sort of the merger mania that has taken place to where CBS, which obviously we'll chat about in a bit, and was it Skydance that they're merging with, and
yeah,
or it's
got
Paramount in that because CBS is just a subsidiary of
right,
Paramount, and
yeah,
these famous names are still there. Skydance is something new, but Paramount, as old as it can be, CBS is over 100 years, almost 100 years old, and yet they are completely different and they're all a part of each other. And
well, they're all striving for market share, and they're kind of a race to the bottom in terms of the kind of news they present, because now we've got all the cable news channels, not to mention any like Fox or anything, that are just crap, right? They even admit they're not a news organization. And then the others to compete kind of, head down. So it's unfortunate. It's that I think that the breadth of news, which should be great, has done what, first of all, what David was talking about with music. Now everybody is in their little silo of their right or left wing or whatever. But also, it's just made the everything go to the lowest common denominator. It's a breath of fresh air when you hear something from the BBC or something that's not necessarily caught up in this mess. So
Well, and it's true. I mean, we have friends, or I have friends that will listen to the world news on the BBC because they think they get a better picture of what's going on than even stalwarts like NBC, CBS, and ABC nightly news.
mhm.
So,
and over here, I mean, in a lot of places, people will be listening to, watching, or reading Al Jazeera because, again, you
Right.
think you're getting something that's got a different slant, and especially if you look at their editorials, a very
Yeah.
very different view. It's not hugely radically different, but it can be, and you get a different perspective. So it still exists, and it's still there for places where the big arms of the state can come down and kind of really control what's coming from the outside or the news from the inside. There aren't very many states that can keep anything from coming out permanently. Most people can figure out something around that. But again, we're cutting that back out. Voice of America has been cut. So
yeah.
because
Yes.
obviously America doesn't need soft power like that, doesn't need to communicate anywhere else.
I mean,
Nor
yes, it had a lot of
NPR.
propaganda on it, but it was our propaganda.
Yeah, well,
So
exactly. But this is truth, justice
that's
is
right.
the American way. Uh,
You know, I was going to say the other thing that we talk about is the evolution of retailing. I mean, when we grew up, I mean, if we wanted a pair of pants, we go down to Spalding Brothers. Um, you knew who those guys were. They knew our parents. If we wanted to go to, I'm trying to think what other stores were downtown. The Western Auto Store, Newberry's, and these were local
Bears, yeah.
places, and they're gone. I
yeah,
mean, now they were gone first because Walmart comes in, and Walmart has this great big machine where, they're selling things at a cheaper price. And I don't know when you guys realized it, Russ, maybe you never did, but there was a point in my life where, I realized I could get it at Walmart cheaper than trying to shop around. And so you quit shopping. You
Mhm.
just go to Walmart. And then there came the day when I realized that if I wanted a jacket, I could just go to the local store and try on a jacket and get the size I wanted, and then come home and go to the internet and order the jacket on the internet in the color I wanted, which wasn't available in the store, and then I don't have to drive around Louisville looking for the correct color. And of course, then what happens is the store where I used to at least go try it on goes out of business.
Yeah.
And so I can't try it on anymore.
Yeah. It's the
Yeah.
So,
showroom for online, and
yeah.
no money for it because they don't get a kickback or anything like that.
Mhm.
And this is killed in little towns. My brother used to live in Franklin, Kentucky. Has a beautiful little downtown area around the square. It is quintessential Southern, kind of neo-Victorian, or even not Victorian architecture, turn of the century, that kind of prairie stuff. But of course, everything is about a mile down the road where there is just a vast place that looks like everywhere. And then you could plop somebody down having covered their head and then gagged them and everything, driven them around in circles. They could pop them there where they have no idea where they were. They could be anywhere in the country, including from California to Maine, more than likely. And of course, this has all been for convenience in a way, but it's really the convenience of those who are doing the selling, who now maybe pass along to the consumers, but gouge like crazy the producers or the wholesale, the people who are providing the items. And it's a devil's bargain in a way because it kills the small towns or even the bigger cities. I was in
Well,
Newport.
Now,
Oh yeah, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
go ahead, Roy.
Oh, now we're in a situation where those large retailers themselves are, of course, being threatened or already going out of business. And I find myself nostalgic for like Circuit City,
Yeah,
or something like that. That's like,
Radio Shack.
service merchandise. It's why,
Yeah.
am I nostalgic for this? That those driving small towns out of business, right? So,
Well, we all went to Bacon's growing up. That was one of the
yep.
premier
And
department
Stewart's,
stores,
Yeah.
yeah.
and Stewart's, and they're both gone. And
Yep.
so, I hear somebody say, usually one of my wife or one of her friends on a weekly basis, we don't have that place anymore to go just shop. And it's kind of interesting because downtown Bardstown's done a really good job of putting restaurants and boutiques and creating themselves kind of a little touristy kind of center because of the Bourbon Trail. I feel
Mhm.
sorry for other communities, but if you think about when we grew up, we needed anything, we could go to downtown Third Street and that 2 blocks in downtown Third Street between the courthouse and Broadway.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
anyway, and get what we needed. And then they built the W.T. Grant out on, now the roads are disappearing.
Well, there's East Stephen Foster, right?
Springfield Road.
Springfield Road. Yeah.
Yeah,
That was out
out
where I
that
lived.
way.
Uh,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so then it seemed like, and then the movie theater out there, and it seems like a portion of town shifted that way. And then they built the Kroger and the Walmart out on 245, and then town has shifted that way.
I think that was
And
the
it,
death knell because Grants was in its death throes when it came
Right.
into to Bardstown, and so I think that mall never really did it. But it was the bypass in 245 and Third Street
Yeah.
stuff where McDonald's went. Where
yes.
Yeah.
McDonald's and Walmart go, death follows in its wake. It's two of the horsemen of the apocalypse, I think. I don't know what the other ones are. Probably vape stores.
Amazon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, vape stores. Oh my gosh.
Oh God.
I was about to say GameStop, but that's another story.
Yeah.
Anyway, and now if you're in Bardstown, it's at the other end of the bypass, out toward the Bloomfield Road, where they've got a Walmart, a Lowe's, a movie theater, a Cracker Barrel, and so it's almost the town square is now out there. And then the other byproduct of that is you really wonder because you don't have that town center and you don't have that walkability like you would have had in a downtown area. And so you almost need your automobile or public transportation to get to any kind of a shopping point,
Yeah.
unless you're on the internet. So,
Yeah. Well, speaking of shopping and needing a car, the malls were fun when we were kids. They were the big thing. I mean, we had to go to Louisville for it, but there were some good ones down there,
Yeah,
and now they're dead everywhere, just
yeah.
about, unless it's in a city. And it's just I kind of especially miss it in Maine because it's colder than hell up here. So in the wintertime, you can actually go in and not freeze your butt off
Yeah.
going from one store to another.
Well, we used to say that shopping malls were the new town squares, or
Yeah.
the new downtowns. So you went there for community, and the kids would go there, and people would trick or treat there when the needles in the apples and razor blades in the apples threats happened. So they would go there. So but that's gone. And I remember there
Yeah.
was a new variant of it, and that was near where my parents lived, and they're one of their last homes was in Mount Juliet, just outside in one of the counties over from Davidson County out of Nashville. And it was a whole shopping complex, but it wasn't under a roof. It was lots of different things, but they hardly put sidewalks in the thing, and you still had to drive there. It was probably the size of some of the bigger ones, Mall of America and some of those kind of places that you hear about. And yet you would go to three, and people would probably drive three different times within not a very big space. And it was pretty good. And yet it dies, I think. I think it's pretty much gone now as any kind of really viable shopping alternative from your other. So, what's happened is we've gone to being able to get anything we want, and there wasn't as much,
Hmm.
wasn't as much choice, but now there's loads of choice, but we can only get it on that or on this. And if we walk anywhere, it's just to look at it. So it begs the question of what cities are for, except for bedrooms and bars, I guess. So when you're doing your hiking, Dave, you've got somewhere to go to cool off.
There's,
This
there's
is
always got,
a bit of pre-show banter what's going on here.
yeah, there's always got to be a destination point
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
or a payoff at the end of a walk, right?
absolutely. And it always involves some sort of consuming.
Well, and,
As a
yeah,
consumer, you have to.
Yeah.
and the interesting thing is you mentioned a bar, but a bar may be the only place where you find a local entrepreneur running the tap instead
Hmm.
of going someplace like an Olive Garden or a
Yeah,
Red Lobster or a Longhorn or
Yep.
I could go on and on about all and those places are great. I mean but I we had those kinds of places everywhere growing up. I mean, Tom Pigs was
Hmm.
locally owned, and
yeah,
yeah, some of the smaller restaurants in Bardstown are locally owned. I mean, Mammy's Kitchen and some really great places that we were accustomed to growing up. But outside of town, you can go to a Cracker Barrel, or you can go to a Chi Chi's, or you can go to any number of places around town.
They still have
Um,
Chi-Chi's? Oh my goodness.
yeah,
but you get the
I'm sorry, not
reality.
Chi Chi's, Chili's.
Yeah,
Oh, Chili's. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Chili's. Yeah, I'm sorry.
but you
Okay.
Now
get
I'm showing my age.
you get the idea when you go to enough of those that the because the general manager of the local thing has come in, and you have to have the same experience wherever you go to one
Mhm.
of those. You realize that it's a kind of a faux experience. It's not really an experience, it's just calories. And sometimes it tastes pretty good and sometimes it doesn't, but there's not a lot of soul in those places, and you can feel it compared to going to one of the others.
You
About
mean when you go to Olive Garden, you're not actually family? Is that
say
right?
again? Oh,
When you go to Olive Garden, you're not actually family? Jeez.
well, I don't think so. I don't think you're Italian, and
It
the
depends on which family you're talking about.
yeah.
Oh, good thing we don't have a lot of ethnic listeners, I'm guessing.
So it's I mean it is I think it's the nature of economics and everything else that things go to scale for purchasing power, for control, for unanimity. People like to know where they're going. All of those things are true, but you sort of feel something being sucked out, and while I think in restaurants they probably aren't entirely enshittified in the term that Doctorow's using, in that eventually the experience will be debased from what it used to be. What it probably won't do is exalt it any time. You know, you're not going to get an improvement in it. It's just going to be, well, they'll have another, specials like Applebee's. Oh, we were at Applebee's once when we were over there. My wife was cracking up. It took a long time. So at Applebee's, that means, an extra 5 minutes or something like that. And they came out like we were going to walk out. I said, we're British. It doesn't, or at least I pretend to be one. This doesn't bother us. And yet, what the excuse they used was brilliant. The chef is new and he hasn't had salad training yet. I just thought, oh, you mean, what is this strange green thing with leaves? I don't know what to do with it. Well, let me tell you.
He just didn't want.
You mix the oil with that? I mean, does that work?
How do you fry this stuff? Yeah.
He just couldn't use a knife.
No, I think that's probably it, or maybe you used it too well. But I think those are the things. The idea that somehow, and that is exactly a corporate notion, that uniformity and unanimity of style and presentation and thing is what people want, as opposed to what is economically viable for the corporation. Everybody's going to think I'm sort of, my name is is Lenin, but I'm not advocating something. I'm just, you do have to look at these things as they are, I think, sometimes.
Well, years ago I read a book called The Walmart Effect.
Yeah.
And I don't remember when like antiperspirant was put in cardboard boxes. I don't remember that, but the book made a statement that used to be what had gone on in when you sold deodorant and things like that. You put it in a box, and you open the box, and you got the container that the deodorant was in, and so you threw away the box. So somewhere along the line, as the article supposed, is Walmart figured out that those boxes cost about we'll say 5 cents each, just to make it kind of fair. So Walmart then puts pressure, because Walmart was the big engine, on the deodorant company to take the deodorant out of the box, throw away the box. And so they throw away the box and they just put the deodorant on the counter. And so Walmart then says, what we're going to do is we'll save the consumer money, because instead of charging them 5 cents extra, we'll cut it 2 cents. We're going to give you a penny. So you're going to make a penny more because you got rid of the cardboard box, and we're going to keep 2 cents. The consumer's saving money, but we're going to make the deodorant company and Walmart, we're going to make money. So, that's good for everybody, unless you make cardboard boxes.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
Yeah. So it's actually, we're saving you by kind of charging you more, because you don't even get the cardboard box now, in case you wanted to use that for Christmas presents or something. Yeah. And yeah, it's in your favor. So this is exactly enshittification. It is, you gear the thing toward the business, obviously toward themselves, but also to their vendors. And you actually kind of charge them a little more. You could argue that's neither here nor there, but I'm sure Walmart has done it in many other ways, but more than compensated for by all those old guys who greet you and at the door. People like me who have a job in the future, either there or back in the toilet, interesting times. Yeah.
Packaging in general has been enshittified, I think, and part of that is driven by the needs of the company rather than the consumer. If you've ever bought, well, nobody buys CDs anymore, but they were ghastly hard to open.
Yes.
And now if you buy anything electronic or anything small that could be stolen easily, you buying scissors is my favorite because you need scissors to get in
Yeah.
to open scissors,
Yeah.
right? So, you know,
Yes,
that
they
is
are.
definitely not driven by us. That's driven by the corporate needs not to have shoplifting,
Yeah.
and whatnot. So I think that's an example of enshittification in
Yeah.
action.
No.
Well, so have you ever tried to open up anything that has been shrunk wrapped?
Oh God, yes.
I mean, I know you're talking about needing the scissors, but if you're even meat that you
Yeah,
buy at the
Yeah.
store that's been shrunk wrapped, it's like, well, I've got to wash the scissors after I use them,
Yeah.
and I better wash them before I use them too, because
yep,
no telling that we've learned, no telling what kind of germs are going to come out of the chicken now that
yeah.
we've cut it open. So,
One
And
of
I
the,
don't know if it
and
was.
it's the overuse of packaging as well. One of the sort of swish supermarkets over here is called Waitrose, and it's high end, bigger aisles. Its own brands are pretty good, but you go to the vegetable section and they are covered in plastic and things like that. They're not that hard to get into, but there's absolutely no reason for it except that they've decided, oh, well, I can bundle these bananas in plastic, or I can bundle these, different kind of lemons and limes together. Oh, that'll sell to the people who want not so many lemons and not so many limes, but you have to put them in plastic. So at a time when this is a company that's really trying to promote itself as green, as progressive, and it has a rather progressive relationship with its employees. They call partners, and yet they're plasticizing everything for obvious reasons, not really the convenience of the consumer.
and let's not get us started on coffee.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about it, you used to buy a can of coffee, you put it in the coffee maker, even and maybe you made 6 to 8 cups at a time or more. And now it's kind of like, well, I want a regular cup of coffee. And the wife comes in and, I like that Blueberry Mountain coffee
Yep.
that they make. And so you put the little Keurig pack in
And
there. And so at the end of the day, just as you're talking about with the plastic, Russell, you throw away the plastic. And I'm probably paying more for those little Keurig cups so that I
oh
can
yeah.
get one cup of coffee as a convenience. And I'm probably polluting the world with those little plastic K cups and probably paying more for it than I would have if I were taking it out of the tin and putting in the old Mr. Coffee.
Well, and the K cups, Keurig, I'm guilty on this one with Keurig, but they're
Me too.
recyclable,
Yeah.
right? You can take the stuff out and recycle, but no recycler in their right mind will take them. They've told us this up here. Don't put those in the recycling because they're too small. They fall through the machines.
Oh,
Not that I mean, whether or not they actually recycle plastic or toss is a topic for another day.
yes.
But they can't use the Keurig stuff, so you end up with, like you say, Dave. You've got these plastic pieces of crap
Yeah.
that you see as you can use them as potting, seed starters. How many
Yeah,
seeds am I going to plant?
I've got 500
Shot
of them.
glasses.
Yeah,
Well,
it's got a hole in the
and,
bottom, but
Yeah.
and to
Wow.
make it worse, you can buy the filters, the individual filters, and put the coffee in yourself.
yeah.
But you have to find, I bought a Keurig and I thought, well, I'm going to do this. And I had to order the filter that I needed for this particular Keurig online. And, I did this for maybe 6 months. And then it's like, you're getting up in the morning and you're tired and you're like, oh, well, what the heck? We're going to put the plastic K cup back in there. So,
Yeah, we're conveniencing ourselves out of everything these days, I think. Because I enjoy the brand of coffee I get at Pete's Coffee. It's really good, I think. But I also enjoy putting the ground version in an AirPress and just making it. It takes like, a little more effort, but when you get up in the morning, it's like that little bit of effort. It's
Yeah.
like,
Small
so,
thing that all adds
yeah,
up, or
yeah.
doesn't, but we think it does. And,
We
and
think
if
it
you,
does,
if you
yeah.
save that time,
Yeah.
How do you accumulate that time? What is used in the meantime? I don't know. We have a thing called a lavazza. It's a sort of a
Oh yeah.
probably one that sits on the stove top and bubbles away. And sometimes it works and the filter goes. I mean, the little ring goes and then it doesn't work at all. But the thing that irritates me is they put the coffee in these sort of squishy bags over here now, rather than the tin. And so you cut it, and immediately stuff flies everywhere because I come at it with my sort of trimmer and my scissors and cut it. I have a shower of coffee that I use. And I said, what was wrong with that tin? It's classic. It's
Yeah.
the
It's actually useful.
container for coffee. Is a coffee.
Yeah.
You can't do that now.
What I really miss is going to the A&P for some, speaking of old things that are no longer, but and my mom would get the coffee, pour it in the grinder there and grind it, and just the smell was throughout the store. So I
Yeah.
mean, you can do that at home, but it's just,
Yeah, it's not the same.
not
But
the same.
and again, it doesn't help me anyway. I have no sense of smell, so
Oh well.
you just have to imagine it. But well, we're wandering off and off, and I thought the last thing we might talk about, because I think this really is, especially from our 70s, is the thing that has been enshittified in virtually every aspect of what we're thinking about. And I think that's the American legal system. It's probably any legal system, but if you think about what the Supreme Court was like when we were growing up, first of all, we had the Warren Court in the 60s. It passed all these monumental things beginning in the 50s. And then even the Burger Court, which we claimed was quite a conservative court, but it was still a mix, still passed Roe v. Wade, still managed to approve essentially or force Richard Nixon to resign. And can't really see anything like that happening these days. So I
Well, the
think,
whole legal system, not just the Supreme Court, but the DOJ has been um, used to someone was saying on the radio today, we've gone from the DOJ being reporting to the people, now it's reporting to one person. And it always technically was, but there was the independence that people respected about the DOJ, and how this is now, that kind of thing is just a hallmark of authoritarianism.
yeah.
And that it should have fired the entire DOJ, I think.
Yeah, again, in every aspect,
Mhm.
it's away from the people toward
Mhm.
the money, toward the supporters,
Yeah.
toward one guy. But
Well,
even law, and
Mhm.
I've been sort of tootling around with an idea for a thing, I've always said, and this was one of my sort of party pieces when I wanted to bore somebody and chase them away, is this: I don't care too much about whether we have democracy or not, as long as we got the rule of law. Now the two really kind of go together, but the idea being you want rules based for everybody. How you get the leaders, as we've seen, is a kind of a crapshoot. But actually, if you've got stable rule of law, but you can't really have a stable rule of law without that. But also, the rule implies almost like a game, and that's really what the legal system has become, and maybe it always has been. It's a game, and I did one of my master's thesis was on sport, but it also talked about a guy. There was a guy named Huizinga, I think was the historian, but he had called Homo Ludens was his book, Man the Player, and he was looking at all the aspects of life that didn't have anything to do with sports that we think of, but were games, because there are two sides competing with rules and usually with a referee of some kind. And
Mhm.
that's kind of essentially what courts have always been. But the rules are so skewed away from the common man who are supposed to be accessing it. And all you got to do is listen to podcasts, Serial or one of those that spent a year in the Cleveland justice system, as you'll realize this is not a justice system. This is a justice game, and I think that has now reached its apotheosis with this particular court.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's one man's opinion, or maybe three guys' opinion.
well, I mean,
But
what
I think it's
you
hard to
deal
say
with
it's
is that
not.
Yeah, what you deal with, Russ, to use your analogy, is that when a player or a team gets control of the referee.
Yeah.
And so, what we've seen over the last 25 years is where as Congress became more rigid and more and less willing to try to work out compromises, they kind of stalled. And I think you first saw Obama, and then to some degree Trump and Biden, and now Trump issue executive orders to kind of get beyond that stalemate that existed in the Congress. And of course, what's been going on in the meantime is that one party, through chance or whatever, has been able to appoint. We can see it more obviously in the Supreme Court, a large number of justices. And so not only are maybe, we getting away from the certain things as you mentioned, but they've gotten control of the courts by appointing justices who were like-minded.
Mm-hmm.
And through the stalemate, a lot of the laws are challenged. And as they're challenged, they're forcing the courts to make those decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And so Congress isn't doing it. President's trying it. President's pushing. He wants control. And they've gotten to a point where right now, for many cases, it appears the referee is supporting what the president wants to do because the president has appointed a number of those referees, or his party has. Unfortunately, nobody in the party is willing to buck the captain of the team,
Yeah.
so to say, to use the analogy.
And the Supreme Court has been, I mean, it's not necessarily by chance that it's like this. Our good old friend Mitch from Kentucky, and the guy that no one hears about but has been the mastermind behind it, Leonard Leo, who spends a good deal of his time here in Maine, I'm sad to say, have stacked the court intentionally over the years, especially Leo, who's a kind of a billionaire behind the scenes kingmaker, judge maker. And that's the way you get things done, like you're saying, is come to the courts. And so if you have the court, you can make the decisions. The other thing was the founding fathers, and Russ can correct me because he's actually his historian, but the founding fathers were okay with it being a deadlock in Congress. They didn't want things to happen too fast, but they kind of counted on these three co-equal branches of government kind of keeping each other in check. I don't think they were necessarily planning on whatever brought the current situation around.
Yeah.
So.
Well, these are evolutionary kind of things as well. I mean, the most famous decision is Marbury versus Madison, which is not about anything that anybody's remotely interested in terms of a case, but that's the first judicial review. And that was essentially Justice Marshall saying, this is our job, and everybody else agreeing with it. And he never made another decision like that in his career. He did one, I think, John Marshall, the most famous justice, and that was it. And then you had a handful of others. Then you had, Dred Scott and some of these other decisions that come into play in the middle of the 19th century. So it was there, but once the norms were there, and this is again another one of these things that's fallen by the wayside. We have a lot of things that weren't laws, but there were norms that everybody accepted. And when they stopped accepting them, and everybody, when Trump crossed the red line and nothing happened, he crossed the next red line and nothing happened again. And he was the guy who dared to do it. Now they probably would say, oh, well, Lincoln did that maybe during the war. Well, maybe a little bit, but he also ran for office and was more than willing to lose. Roosevelt probably did a bit. Certainly Wilson did, but there was always a backing up. But the question is now, will there be any backing up once we were there? And mind this also, several of the people sitting on those on the Supreme Court lied to Congress because they said, oh, we would consider things. And it was a nonsense. I mean, Amy Coney Barrett has spent her entire career as an academic talking about how Roe v. Wade was a bad law. Why don't you just come and but she comes, oh, well, I will judge it on its merits. And all that. No, you won't.
Yeah. And Kavanaugh, no, it's settled law,
Yeah. first chance you get, you're going to turn it
Yeah.
down because you've been saying this all your life. Why are you lying? But no, but we sort of still thought the rules applied. And so these guys get in there, and then you get ones who are just morons as well, like Alito, and you can't even buy his arguments, and yet they're there forever. So
Yeah.
Well, and the thing has been going on. I mean, Roy mentioned the gentleman from Maine, but the Koch brothers from Kansas,
yeah,
when the Supreme Court decided that you couldn't restrict money because of freedom of speech, you began to develop political PACs. And what some people don't realize is that within the justice system, some of these PACs fully fund conferences and they fly these attorneys and judges to conferences, and they're imbued with these conservative thoughts that, this is the way the legal system does, this is the way the argument is. And so it's like all of us, when the only argument we hear, because we're being flown to these conferences to get our CEUs or whatever, as a judge, is the argument that Roe versus Wade was a bad law. Of course, you're going to overturn it
yeah.
because as we talked about news sources and where we get our news and how that may form opinions, they're subject to the same thing. So,
And corporations are persons.
That's right.
But interestingly, I mean, has it been ever thus? After the 14th Amendment was passed, over the next 50 years, in the, oh, well, 40 years, corporations were far more the beneficiaries of arguments about the 14th Amendment than individuals were. So I mean, this is so it wasn't like the freedmen and the former enslaved people were winning lots of cases with the 14th Amendment.
Yeah.
Jay Gould and John D. Rockefeller were. So I think one of the things we always have to realize is no matter how new we think it is, it's always been this way in other times, but we've somehow managed to make steps beyond that. So perhaps this is just yet another sick cycle, like at the end of the robber barons period, in which then you had the progressive era. So it's possible that that may still happen. But Texas is about to re-gerrymander itself, so who knows? We might be into a gerrymandering war pretty soon. California has Newsom's drawn the line, so we'll see. That's probably not new either, but more new in that they're doing it in a non-census year.
Texas used to always threaten to secede, and I'm thinking, pardon me, Kathy, but
yeah,
go, go.
yeah, bon voyage.
Yeah,
Don't let the door hit your butt on the way out.
exactly.
But yeah, that would still leave Florida. So just
That's true.
that's all we need to say. Well,
and Canada's already said they're not going to take Maine, so what the hell.
Well, as we've alienated probably the 5 of our 25 listeners, will probably sign off on that. Any last words, Dave?
None. Have a good week.
Okay, Roy.
That sounds good. So don't enshittify your week. Yes.
Same here.
For yourself.
We should put up the German and the French version, but anyway, we don't have any sites to do that. But we'll see. We'll see everybody the next time. Bye bye.
Bye.